Okay, well, we can start, and our gratitude to Chinmoy Prabhu for hosting these. You know, he actually is by Chinmoy Prabhu's grace that I get to have this service. I think, is it been 2 years now? I can't remember. It's been maybe 2 years, yeah. And he had the inspiration to ask me, and from there it's been wonderful. It's been wonderful. Okay, well, all glories to our beloved Srila Gurudev, Srila Bhakti Sundar, Govinda Dev, Goswami Maharaj. So let's see, I have a few questions, nice questions. Let's see, the first one came in last week from our friend Robert. And actually I mentioned this in a few meetings. Robert, he's the person who I mentioned said he was struggling to give up meat. And I told him not to worry about it. He'll just naturally lose his taste for it as he continues hearing and chanting. And that was at the beginning of November. And then at the end of November, he wrote me again last week saying that he's been able to become vegetarian over the course of the month of November. And then he said, because he thinks he's probably going to be an animal or worse in his next life. He wants to know some details on that. And well, Robert, I would say, I don't know, I wouldn't place my bets on that. I would think that you would be guaranteed an auspicious birth because of your pious and devotional mentality and endeavors. So his question is, if we have been traveling through many species of life for ages and ages, how do we now come to human form? How do animals get the karma to go up in species? Because I will probably be an animal or worse in my next life, I need to know how to come back to the human form. Well, first of all, I have to say that, most animals, they wouldn't be able to remember, right? What information you get now and how to go up. Most animals wouldn't be able to retain that. But there are special cases because if you do for some reason take an animal birth, because you have been practicing a life of devotion, then you may be able to remember it. Normally you wouldn't. There's a special case like that mentioned in the person of Maharaj Bharat, right? There's that story in Srimad Bhagavatam that's told that we can maybe mention this as a nice preface to the answer, that most of you, I think, know this story. He was a great king with all the luxury that comes along with that, all the pleasures that come along with that, and he gave everything up. At a certain point in his life, he realized the worthlessness of it all, the pleasures of the senses, power, and all these things. And he gave up everything, went to live in the forest. But while in the forest, he became infatuated with a baby deer. He left his body absorbed in consciousness of this baby deer. He had to take birth as a deer in his next life. But because of his devotional merit, he was blessed with this ability to remember his previous birth. And so in his life as a deer, he was very careful, not just to hang out and do all the things that deer normally do, but he stayed close to the ashram of some sages, and he would hear them and take their prasad and so on. And then in his next birth, he was granted a human birth. And then that's a whole other story that he picked up from where he'd left off in that next birth. So anyhow, going back to this question, yeah, it's actually there's a lot to say on this topic. So first of all, the question is, how do we come to human form? Well, what I've heard is that, and please, Chinmoy Prabhu or anyone else, feel free to jump in and add anything or correct me if you think it's appropriate. But what I have heard is that every jiva soul, every living entity, they work their way down. And they have, see, one principle to remember here is that the spirit of exploitation takes us down and the spirit of dedication takes us up, right? So it's mentioned in the Vedas, what is it? What is the number of species? 8,300,000 species of life. I know.
400,000. 8,400,000.
8,400,000. Thank you. Yes, Roger, I would agree with you. Better to be a fish or a turtle living in the Ganga than a wealthy king far away. Yes, 100%. That brings up another interesting topic that Srila Sridhar Maharaj has mentioned, that an animal may, according to their sukriti, according to their spiritual merit, an animal or plant may actually be in a better position than a human. That's perhaps another, or maybe it's part of this. But anyway, to continue with our line of thought, we hear that every living entity begins with a position like Lord Brahma, right? Lord Brahma, so, right, 8,400,000 species of life, right? And so we hear that the souls, they're generally moving through all of these, but they start out with the highest position. So the position of Lord Brahma, right? He's the creator or the engineer of the mundane universes. And remember, there are many Lord Brahmas, right? There are innumerable mundane universes, and there are many Lord Brahmas. And so we hear that every living entity, their first birth, they have a position like Lord Brahma, who represents the highest birth that one can take within the mundane plane. And remember, Lord Brahma, it's a seat, it's a position, and different jiva souls may occupy that at different times. It's also mentioned that if a soul in this world fulfill all of their duties in the Varnashrama system, their social and religious duties for, is it 100? I think it's 100 births. Then they will get a position like Lord Brahma. That's another point mentioned. But anyway, so we hear that the souls, that their first birth will be the highest birth, and then, according to the weight of exploitation, they will slowly move down to lower and lower births, and then according to the circumstances, right? According to the acquired samskars, like mundane impressions that they have, they'll be moving through so many different births. How much analysis and detail we wanted to go into all of that, I don't think that's necessary. But there's this famous verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which kind of summarizes it. Brahmanda Brahmite kon bhagyavan jeev u Krishna prasade pai bhakti lata bij. That the fortunate soul, Brahmanda Brahmite, right? The soul is wandering. This is the position that we're wandering and wandering through so many different planes of life. The fortunate soul attains the bhakti lata bij, the seed of the creeper of devotion. So this Brahmite, Brahmanda Brahmite, this is what we're doing. And then one thing is also here is that we hear that once you go to a lower birth, you have to work your way up again. Like you'll go down to the bottom, and then you have to work your way up again to get the human birth. The human birth is the goal, right? But it's mentioned in many places, right? Sudurlabha, it's extremely rare, because generally you'll have to, like, once you've gone down to the bottom, you have to work your way up all the way again, like in a sequential kind of way. So, but then there are also exceptions, right? Like if an animal, receives, for example, if an animal receives the grace of a Vaishnava, of a saint, like say an animal eats the prasad, right? The purified holy foodstuffs that has been offered to the Lord. If an animal gets that, then they may be blessed with a human birth in their next life because of that. So, you know, there are some shortcuts if one receives grace. Another thing is that we generally hear that it's only in the human birth that you can acquire karma, right? Sukriti, these are two separate things, right? There's the whole karmic plane, which is pertaining to this mundane world, and then there's the transcendental, the eternal plane, right? And so so that divine grace coming from the eternal world, that can strike us and support us at any point, right? But then in regards to karma, we hear that generally animals, they're just burning off karma, right? They're generally not acquiring. It's only in the human birth that you are acquiring karma. And so in the human birth, you're acquiring karma. And then we also hear that souls afterwards, they'll have to spend some period burning off their bad karma, and they'll also spend a period burning off their good karma, right? So they may spend some time in the heavenly planets, burn in the higher planets, superior planes to the human birth, where they're burning off good karma. And then in lower births, then they'll be burning off bad karma. You know, we hear this also. Let me go back to the question. So how do we come to the human form? So yeah, we have to work once we've entered the game, then we will have to work our way up again. We also hear, you know, just perhaps as a side note, and remember, it's all the gradation is based on consciousness, right? So we hear that cows, you know, what I mean is like going down from the human birth, the gradation is based on consciousness. So the development is based on consciousness. So we hear that the cow, and this is one reason why it's very sinful to kill cows. Cows have the most highly developed consciousness within the animal kingdom. And so it's very, very, apart from the other factors like cows being dear to Krishna and so on, because they're conscious, because sin is determined when it comes to killing, the sin is determined according to how much pain you're causing. So humans have such highly evolved consciousness. So that's considered much more sinful and reactionary to kill a human. And then within the animal plane also will be determined according to the level of consciousness. So cows they're next to humans, we hear. That's like the top birth that you receive. And the birth that you would receive before achieving the human birth. So I think that's everything that I had to say on that. And how do animals get karma? Yeah, so as I said, how do animals get karma to go up? Then that is something that will happen automatically. They'll have to work their way up. But if they receive sukriti, you know, and they can acquire that unconsciously, that's another point. Like Srila Sridhar Maharaj gives the example of birds flying around the temple. They're unconsciously offering respect. They're circumambulating the temple, and that's a way of showing respect. So they're unconsciously acquiring some sukriti, some divine merit. And we mentioned the example also of taking prasad, a dog eating prasad. They're acquiring some spiritual merit there. Chinmoy, do you want to add anything to that?
No, that's you know, it's similar to what I've heard. Yeah.
Okay. And we've had quite a few persons join. I see Jayadev Prabhu is here, Tungarasa, Seva Rupa, Devi Dasi also joined us. And Varshana Devi Dasi, I'm not sure who that is, but welcome. Welcome.
Hi, I'm from Tijuana.
Oh, it's Varshana and Tijuana. Wow, that's exciting.
Hi.
Wow, nice to have you with us.
Nice. I'm so happy to hear you finally. And I'm so sorry for not going to see you personally the past days, but I've been sick, so I didn't want to cause any trouble for that.
Actually, a lot of devotees were sick. Yeah, something was going around. Yeah, well,
Yeah,
very,
it's the dates. Around these dates usually is like that here.
yeah, flu season. Yeah, yeah. Well, I hope you're feeling better and very happy that you can join us today.
Thank you.
Okay, well, if no one else wants to add anything to that, I feel like I've missed something out. But we'll leave it at that. But I'll go. We had another question that came in from one of our new friends. Chintamani introduced Dharmaraj Prabhu, Dharmaraj, a second generation devotee in ISKCON in San Diego. And he joined our Harinam in Tijuana, which was very cool, along with his friend Jordan. So he sent a very nice question. Can we give sincerity? And he's someone who's been a book distributor for many years. And so this was his question. Can we give sincerity? And I would say that's what this is all about. That we are lacking in sincerity, but we are hoping to develop that in association with those who are sincere. And I was reminded in this regard of two verses, one of Srila Sridhar Maharaj, and I actually looked it up just before the meeting. I'm gonna find it. It's in Prapana Jivanamrita, this wonderful scripture by our Param Guru Dev, Srila Bhakti Lakshak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj, and it's this is a verse in the introduction. I'm going to read this. This is verse 9 of the first chapter. Srila Sridhar Maharaj speaking with humility. Anta kavya shashkamam sadhu tavananam mahihi sudyantu sadava sarve dushchikityam imam janam. O saintly devotees, please purify this wrongdoer who on the pretext of saintliness desires in his heart the prestige of a poet, and who is thus afflicted with the practically incurable disease of insincerity. O saintly devotees, please purify this wrongdoer who on the pretext of saintliness desires in his heart the prestige of a poet, and who is thus afflicted with the practically incurable disease of insincerity. So this Prapana Jivanamrita, right, this is Srila Sridhar Maharaj's offering to the Vaishnava assembly and to the Lord. And he's in his divine humility, he's saying that, actually my intentions are all wrong, and I'm actually compelled to compile this because of my desire for prestige, for the prestige of a poet. And I am thus insincere. The practically incurable disease of insincerity. Very, very heavy expression. So, but what's he saying? I mean, it's such a deep verse. There's so much that we can take from this. What's he saying here? That I'm approaching with ill intentions, right? I'm approaching with lower intentions. But you saintly Vaishnavas, you are purity personified, and you have the power to purify me. So although I'm approaching with wrong intentions, you can transform, you can change my heart. And you can change my intentions. This is so Srila Sridhar Maharaj, this is his humble mood, but he's also showing us, right, that this is the way. We're all going to start out with mixed intentions. We can't help that. we cannot help that we're in such a contaminated state. You know, I often come across persons, and some, you know, it's things we face ourselves. I faced myself. You know, there are moments we come to when we just feel like we want to give up because we think there's no hope, right? That we look in our hearts and it's like, oh, I don't even know why I'm doing this, right? We may feel that sometimes. I feel that I have mundane motivation for what I'm doing. Then I'd rather just give it up altogether, right? But that is not the proper mood. Actually, these two things are like moving between the spirit of exploitation and renunciation. You know, neither are the solution. So we want to try to find what is the way forward in the mood of dedication. And even if we have wrong intentions, you know, we still must do the right thing. And we trust that our higher guardians, they can purify us. They will take care of us. You know, do they not have the power for that? You know, do we not have faith in their capacity to purify us? There's another verse in Prapanajivanamrita. I don't remember, maybe someone here will remember the author, but Srila Sridhar Maharaj includes it, saying that, you know, oh Lord, you know, you who can annihilate all the universal planetary systems, do you not have the power to remove the defects of one of your tiny servants? Like, that's not a big deal. It's not a big deal for you. Am I that important? Like, am I such a big deal that even the Supreme Lord, you know, who can do anything and everything, you know, and undo it all over again, you know, he's not able to purify me? Is that outside the realm of his capacity? Like, come on, let's get over ourselves. You know? It's not a big deal for him. It's not a big deal for him. And how merciful are the Vaishnavas, and what is the power of our gurus? We have to have faith in that. Our Gurudev accepted us. You know, our Gurudev accepted us. We have to have faith. You know, he can transform us. He took us on. He took us on as his charge. So we have to take that seriously. And then when we're approaching other persons, you know, we don't want to think actually that we have the power to change someone's heart. We will be shy to think that ourselves, but we are the intermediary, right? Whoever is approaching us or whoever we're approaching and is receiving us, you know, we want to offer them to our gurus, right? We want to offer them to the lotus feet of our gurus. That's where we're taking them. And our gurus, they're that dynamo, that purifying dynamo. And our gurus can purify them. They have the capacity. We're just the intermediary. We have to remember that. We're just the middle men and middle women. So we're offering everything up. If we don't do that, then we're going to be in trouble, actually. We're going to be in trouble. Then we will have to bear the weight of whatever karmic load they're carrying, and we'll be dragged down. So the only way we'll be able to continue is if we offer everyone. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj speaks about transparent guru versus opaque guru, right? The transparent guru is offering everything to their guru, to the Lord, to Mahaprabhu. The opaque guru, everything's getting stuck with them, right? And eventually that will take them down. That's not sustainable. So, and then, you know, Srila Gurudev would speak like this, you know, that you know, Guru Maharaj, he can take care of anyone, you know, that no matter how degraded we are, you know, my Guru Maharaj, he has the capacity to purify anyone. This was Gurudev's mood, you know, how he would express himself sometimes. He wasn't thinking that he was keeping anyone for himself. He said once, he said, I am choking to say my disciple. You know, I'm choking to say my disciple. but I'm offering they're all Guru Maharaj's property. They're all going to Guru Maharaj. And Guru Maharaj, and another time, there was that famous statement in Russia, right? Some of you heard that he announced to a group of his disciples, you're all already liberated. Right? And then he said, I know you're all doing some nonsense, but that is nothing for Guru Maharaj. Guru Maharaj has the capacity to purify you. So, and he would also use that analogy, Shata Pata Veda Nyaya, that logic of a need piercing through 100 leaves. That if you have a bunch of leaves in your hand and you push a needle through, then from one perspective you can say that it's been instantaneous. How long did it take? Oh, it was an instant. No time at all. But if you zoom in on that, and say, well, actually there were some microseconds involved, moving from leaf to leaf. So in the same way, we can say once someone's been brought to the feet of Guru and Gauranga, they've taken that shelter, they've been accepted in that shelter. Then from one perspective, you can say, oh, they're already there. They've already reached the goal. Like in the same way that if you've been accepted by an expert doctor, and you've been given the prescription and the prohibitions and everything, the diet, then one perspective you can say, oh, I'm already cured. It's just a matter of time, right? But if you zoom in, oh, well, actually there may be a few lifetimes involved, but what is that actually within the Ananta Kal, as Gurudev said, within unlimited time? What is a few lifetimes? What is 50 lifetimes? It's nothing. It's nothing. So we have confidence in our gurus. This is where we put our faith, and they have the capacity to purify. Of course, there are many kind of sub points, which could be mentioned here, that we do have to consider our own capacity to some extent. Nityananda Prabhu, he can give this to people who don't want it. Nityananda Prabhu can go to people who have, absolutely zero sincerity, and he can give it to them. But we are not Nityananda Prabhu. And even the Madhyam Adhikar Vaishnava, the middle class Vaishnava, it is advised that they should avoid those who are inimical, right? We have to consider our own capacity to some extent. So persons who are just, downright inimical or very difficult cases, then we may think, oh, I don't have the capacity, or we may think I may be taken down, right? We may consider I may be taken down if I mix too closely with this person. So we don't want to be overconfident, but we don't want to be underconfident either. So, it will be something to decide on a case-by-case basis. And there was another verse that I also wanted to share. And this is a famous verse in Srimad Bhagavatam, which is quoted by our gurus sometimes. Akama sarvakama va moksha kama udarati. So whether one is akama, has no desires, sarva kama, or they're full of desires, or moksha kama, desires moksha, desires liberation. Moksha kama udadati tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. They are the most intelligent if they take shelter of the Lord. They are engaging in bhakti yoga. That is the best, that is the best thing for them to do. That is the only intelligent thing to do. Whether they're full of desires, whether they have no desires, whether they're desiring liberation, whatever it is, that's just the best thing for anyone to do. And the idea is, right, once you have entered the door, then the transformation is going to start place. You may come for with some ill intention, but once you get that higher association, then your heart will change. Your heart will change. There's one very funny story of a couple devotees it was in Caracas, Venezuela. They approached the temple door to steal some shoes. Then they hear the kirtan, they smell the prasadam. Oh, what's all this about? And they go in, they hear something, and before you know it, they ended up becoming some of the leading devotees in our Venezuela mission. It's very dear to our Gurudev. I won't mention the name. And their daughter is also very active. The whole family, they're wonderful. So, that's how it is, right? We all may approach, right, with some lower intention, or we may be attracted by something superficial, right? I've been told by quite a few devotees that what caught them was the incense, or a few told me the lamp, the fire lamp, the deep that is off, like that was so like attractive and mystical, exciting, like to see this fire being offered to the deity, So we may be attracted for something, by something superficial in the beginning. But we may think that we're going to get something out of these people. But once we have that higher association, we come in contact with the purifying nature of this divine substance, then it's like game over. We can't help ourselves. Once we approach the infinite, we're entering the realm of infinite possibility. And that's something that I feel I'm realizing more and more. I feel like I'm being pushed to embrace that, because especially like the way that I'm living, like traveling a lot, and all kinds of circumstances come up, all kinds of variables come up, and sometimes there's a lot of uncertainty involved. And what I've come to realize, and embrace, and I'm like trying to embrace more, and happily so, is that like Krishna is there. Like he's running things. He's going to take care of things. There's a plane beyond the realm, beyond the jurisdiction of what we can perceive and plan for, right? There's one talk of Srila Sridhar Maharaj, where he's speaking with some members of the GBC, and they tell Srila Sridhar Maharaj, we're planning, it was approaching Gaur Purnima time, and they said they're planning some annual meetings of like the worldwide GBC leaders, and we're going to be planning for the next year, our schedule activities in our centers over the next year, something like that. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he said, that's very good, you can make your plans, but when you're making your plans, and you have to remember, Krishna has his own plan. Krishna has his own plan, and he mentioned the Krishna factor, something like that. You have to account for that. And his plan is so much better than ours. We have to remember too that everyone has their own relationship with the Lord. And again, we're middlemen, right? Everyone has the people we're contacting, we have to remember, like, they have a relationship with the Lord that is beyond the scope of our perception and our relationship with them, right? We're just like kind of trying to connect them, and then we're backing off to some extent, and then just seeing like, when should I step in and when should I not, right? Like they have their own thing going on. We have to remember that. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he mentioned this in regards to management. that this is the view that someone should have in management within a Krishna conscious context, that like from a materialistic view, we may have like a list, right? Like, oh, like in regards to the running of a temple, this needs to be done, that needs to be done, right? Got to pay this bill, got to landscape the garden, got to get a pujari, right? There's always a stress about having a pujari and who's gonna cook, et cetera, right? But if we get too much in that mindset, it can just turn into a mundane thing. Like you could just run a household, right? In the same mood. So then when people are coming, right, like volunteering their energy, we may like kind of be in this mood of ticking boxes. Oh, this person can do this. I need a cook, right? I need a pujari. I need a cleaner, right? This person. So Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he made this very wonderful point that we have to remember everyone who's approaching, they have their own relationship with the Lord. They have their own unique service offering that Krishna wants to take from them. And so instead of like kind of sizing them up low, how can they help me with my to-do list? We have to look and think and consider, like, what is it that Krishna wants from them? Like, let's explore that, right? I may ask them to do this service or that service for now, but I also have to keep that space. Oh, what is it that Krishna wants from them? What is their real service offering? That is a wait and see. That is to be seen. That is to be known. Otherwise, it can turn into a materialistic exercise. So also, if we're out preaching and connecting with people, we want to think like that. Like everyone who's approaching us, we want to see what is their relationship with the Lord. We don't know, and we're just giving support when and if necessary. And we hope that they'll all become much greater than us also. That's another point. We don't want to, just because they came through us doesn't mean that they're going to be under us. Rather, we hope the opposite. We hope they'll all far surpass us in Krishna consciousness, and that we can serve them. That is our hope. Srila Swami Maharaj Prabhupada, he has one very touching expression where he says that, I hope one of my disciples, can become liberated and go back to Godhead so that they can bring me back too. They can bring me back. That's his humble expression. One of my disciples will be able to help me out. And there's another expression of Srila Swami Maharaj where he says that whenever somebody new comes to Vrindavan, then Srimati Radharani goes running to Krishna and tells him, oh, Krishna, this new devotee is joined. They're so much better than me. Please accept them. Please accept them. So this is the real mood. We're not here for mundane purpose. We're not here for our own position. No. We're here to try to share this, humbly try to share this wealth according to our capacity. And we're hoping to stay on the boat ourselves. And we're hoping everyone else will surpass us, so we can be in the company of so many souls who are more exalted than ourselves. Like what Krishna consciousness somebody gets is not limited to what we have. And I find it a very encouraging thought, right? Especially now, like in the absence of our beloved Gurudev, Srila Govinda Maharaj. Sometimes I feel sad because I think, oh, they can't get the same exposure to the level of high voltage Krishna consciousness that I got, right? I can only give some very dimmed version of that, right? So I feel this sadness, they're not able, but then I have to remind myself, like, they're not limited to getting just what I'm able to give them, right? They're connecting with the infinite, They're connecting with the infinite, and they're going to have, their relationship with our divine guardians is not limited by time and space, right? And the physical presence. It's not limited. Their experience, their interaction, what they receive, it's not limited by time and space. So they can, you know, even though they may get a watered down version, you know, through persons like myself, you know, they're still making a connection with divinity. And that connection may far surpass what I have. You know, we want to remember that. Sometimes I think of the example of Narottam Thakur. You know, that Narottam Thakur, he never met Srila Rupa Goswami. You know, but you read in this, we hear in this song, Sri Rupa Manjari Pada, where he's expressing the most intense devotion and affinity for the lotus feet of Sri Rupa. It's extraordinary. I mean, that prayer is the most highly revered prayer that we have. But he never met Rupa Goswami in person. So where did that come from? Sometimes I think of these things as existing and they're like doors of consciousness that we may access by grace, by divine grace, and in response to our own heart's necessity. And they're not limited by time and space and circumstance. So revelation can come regardless of our immediate environment. The compensation, Srila Sridhar Maharaj also used that word. The compensation will come. Like if we have the necessity, if somebody has the necessity for some higher level of truth, that even though it may be lacking in their immediate association and immediate circumstances, the compensation will come, right? The response will come. That is Guru. Guru will appear according to the necessity of our own heart. And by Guru, I don't necessarily mean the Diksha Guru, but Guru may come in different forms and through different media. So if we have that need in our heart, that heart's necessity for some higher level of truth, it will come to us. It will come to us. It will be that call will be heard, right? That need will be felt in the higher plane. So we have to have faith in all of these things. Does anyone have any comment at this point, any question, or Chinmoy, if you want to add anything? We still have a little bit of time. I'm happy we can discuss these topics.
I guess, Didi, also when you mentioned Gurudev saying, Govinda Maharaj saying in Russia, you were all liberated, it also made me think about another thing that I heard Gurudev say, where like if we have faith and we're performing our service, trying to approach the divinity, that we are not too eager to see the results. Like the results are going to come, but we shouldn't be. That's not what we should be after, is the results. The results will come, and we have to have faith that the results will come.
Very nice, very nice. Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he quotes an expression of Saraswati Thakur in this regard that, we want to water the root, right? And the fruit will come automatically. You do your part, you give the fertilizer, you give the water, and so on. And you give your attention to that, and the fruit will come automatically. You don't have to worry about that. It will come. So we may not always be able to know how we're doing, right? We don't know actually, but we can ask ourselves, are we doing the practices? Are we putting in the time? Are we trying to adjust our hearts? Are we trying to practice Trinada Pisu Nichena, all these things? And if we're doing that, then we can feel some comfort. Yes, I'm on the path. That's the important thing, right? We're on the path. Does anyone else have any other questions for our meeting today? We still have about 10 minutes. There were also going back to that question about
Roger may want to say something.
oh, Roger, did you want to say something?
I guess just speaking to the tree analogy a little more, it does feel like, yes, you want to water the root and fertilize, and it can also help if you are like pruning the fruit tree correctly when it starts to show its blossoms. I mean, it seems like there is a lot of different work you can put into to maximizing the amount of fruit you get, but at the same time, you just have to find some kind of balance to where you don't get too burnt out, I guess, and then just abandon the tree altogether. So I'm just trying to find that balance in my own life, I think, right now, as far as like how much I want to try to push to the highest standard, but then how much I should also just be accepting of where I am and not being too hard on myself, or, wanting to give up altogether or something like that. So it's not really a question there, I guess, but just me thinking further on like the tree analogy. It seems to work really well, but just that kind of wanting to find some kind of sustainable balance along the way.
Mm-hmm. Well, sometimes we have to wait. We have to wait for Krishna's mercy. Because it is only by higher grace that we will ultimately be able to let go, become free from all of our lower desires and habits, tendencies, So there will be some period where we're going through all these things, dealing with our own desires, but in the back of our minds, in the core of our hearts, we want something else, And Chinmoy Prabhu was referenced, I think Chinmoy Prabhu, and maybe it was our last meeting, you were referencing these verses. They're from Bhagavatam. I have Prabhupada Jivanamrita open. We can go through them now. They're really important verses, which are addressing this issue. And Chintamani's just put a question in the chat. And Ajita Krishna's also just joined us. Welcome, Prabhu.
Good to see you, Didi.
Nice to hear you, Prabhu. Chintamani's is how to keep enlivened in Krishna consciousness when we have had not so good experiences with our local leadership temple community. That's a great question and always relevant. Maybe we'll save it for next week because we are running out of time, and it would be nice to go through these verses that we just mentioned. So yeah, Chintami, maybe we'll save that for next week. It's a kind of a big topic, and I am going to look up here. These are verses in Srimad Bhagavatam, as I said, and Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he cites them in his Prapana Jivanamrita. They are in the penultimate chapter, Shri Bhagavad Vachanamritam, words of nectar from the Supreme Lord. Okay, and so that's chapter 9, around verse 40. I'm just looking for them. Jato Shadhamakatas, Nirvina. I used to have them all memorized, but not totally now. Jato Shadhamakatas, Nirvina Sarva Karmasu. Let's see. So all these, just scrolling through these verses, so beautiful. Yeah, so this is chapter 9 of Prabhupada Jivanamrita, verses 43 to 46. And so these are the verses. Well, I'll read Srila Sridhar Maharaj's own, this is Srila Sridhar Maharaj's own Sanskrit illumination on these verses. Labda Shuddha Bhakti Bijasya Nirvinasyanubhuta Dukatmaka Kama Sarupasyapi Tat Jagasamarja Garhana Silasya Tacha Nishkapata Nishtapurvaka Yajita Bhaktyangasya Bhaktasya Saner. Sorry, no diacritics, unfortunately, so my pronunciation may be off. Bhagavan Hridayodita San Nikila Vidyatat Karyani Cha Vidvam Sayam Yiravachina Nija Chinmoy Vilasa Damai Vai Vishkadoti. For one who receives the seed of devotion, who is selfless and penitent, denouncing their inability to abandon mundane enjoyment, despite realizing it to be the embodiment of suffering, and who sincerely gives themselves incessantly to all the practices of devotion. In the heart of such a devotee, the Supreme Lord ascends like the rising sun to annihilate all ignorance with its reaction, revealing his divine personality in all its pristine glory. And then these are the verses. Jatto Shadu Matkatasu Nirvina Sarva Karmasu Veda Dukatmakam Kamam Prityagye Pyanishwaraha. So these are spoken directly by Lord Krishna. Jatto Shadu Matkatasu. For one who has kata, me, Nirvina Sarva Karmasu, and they've lost all interest in this reactionary world, this world of karma, in the plane of mundane enjoyment, right? And this word nirvana, I've seen it translated in different ways. Here it's rendered as like denouncing. You know, I've seen it as become indifferent to. I've seen it also as disgusted by, you know, this whole world of enjoyment. So they've reached this realization. However, you know, and Veda Dukatmakam Kaman, they know it's an abode of suffering, duk. It's misery, that whole world. However, Parityagye Pyanishwaraha, they are unable to give it up. You know, like someone who has an addiction to smoking, right? And they know it just causes suffering. They know it's making them sick. They don't even get any pleasure out of it anymore. But old habits die hard, right? Just can't stop. Then what? What happens from there? They have faith in the Lord. They know this world is meaningless, but they can't give it up. Then what do? Next verse. Tato bhajita mamprita shadda Lord jidinishchayaha jushamanas chatankaman dukodarkam chagarhayam. You know, such a person, the Lord is saying, you know, they should continue to serve me with faith and love, with firm dridha nishchaya, firm conviction. Dushamanas chatankaman dukodarkam chagarhayam. And from time to time they will fall, you know. They will fall under the influence of these lower tendencies, lower desires. But Dukkha Darkam Shagarhyam, they will sorrowfully repent for that. Our Gurudev, he gave the analogy of this old system of punishment, like dunking someone. You know, they get dunked underwater for some time, then they pulled up for air and dunked again. So Gurudev said our material desires are like that. We may be submerged by these lower desires for some time. Then we get some consciousness, we get some awareness, we'll come up for air. We get that clarity. Then again, we come under the influence. So this will go on for some time. Then Proktena Bhakti Yogena Bhajato Masaprinmune Kam Hridaya Nashyanti Sarve Maya Hridistate. And such a person, Proktena Bhakti Yogina, Krishna is saying, like all those teachings of Bhakti Yoga, of Bhakti which have been given by me, Bhajato Masu Primuna, they will incessantly give themselves to them. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj, she also gave a twist to this verse. It was Tivrena Bhakti Yoga, and like with firmness, like with even more intensity than before, right? Sometimes that happens, right? You make a mistake and then you have a desire to try even harder. You fall down and then you get up with more determination. I'm gonna do better this time. So they will, with this earnestness, they will give themselves as much as they can to the practices of devotion, taking shelter of that higher plane. And then eventually, Kam Hridaya Nashyanti, that calm, that lust, that material desire in the Hridaya, heart, Nashyanti, will be destroyed. Sarve Maya Hridistate. And they will realize my presence within their heart. You know, I will arise within their heart. You can also say, I will arise within their heart. And that calm will be, when that sun, when that Krishna sun arises in the heart, no shadows can remain. No darkness can remain when that Krishna sun has arisen within the heart. And then the final verse here, Vidyate hridaya grantis, chidyante sarva samshaya, shiyante chashakarmani, mayidrishte kilatmani. And find this hridaya grantis, these knots on the heart, right? Which represent our material attachments, you know, conceptions, desires. These are like knots, twists in the heart, which are constricting the natural flow of the heart to move towards Krishna. Vidyate, those will be cut, those will be pierced. Surgery, heart surgery. Chidyante sarva samshaya, all doubts will be removed, all doubts will be slashed. All anything that is lacking within us, all lack of fulfillment will be cleared. We will be fully satisfied. Shiyante chashakarmani, that bondage of karma will be cut. Mayijishte kilatmani, they will see that I am everywhere. They will see that I am everywhere. They will see my presence everywhere. Connect everything with me. So these verses are very encouraging, very helpful verses, and emphasized by our Gurudev Srila Govinda Maharaj, by our Param Gurudev Srila Sridhar Maharaj. They're very important for practitioners. I'll share this link here in our chat if anyone wants to look this up. This is yeah, you can around verse 40 in that chapter. Uh-oh, I think, did my connection drop? I'm seeing some no, it's okay.
No, you're okay.
Okay, I think Chinmoy's connection has dropped. Oh yeah, Chinmoy's dropped out. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, we've just come to the end of our time. Thank you, Roger, for bringing up that topic. It's always very relevant. And have also Anu Krishna Devi Dasi here.
Dandavats, Hare Krishna.
Hosting me at the moment.
Dandavats, all the devotees.
All right. Will anyone have any last comments before we close for today, or should we end there? And thank you all for your kind association. Jai Shri Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj ki Jai, Shri Bhakti Raksha Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj ki Jai, Shri Swami Maharaj Prabhupada ki Jai, Bhagavan Shri Bhakti Siddhanta Swami Thakur ki Jai. All the assembled devotees and sincere seekers ki jai. Shri Hari Nam Singh.
God,
Oh, Chinmoy Prabhu's here.
God.
Talk back in. Vishakha Didi ki jai.
Vishakha Devi Dasi ki jai.
Yeah.
Okay.
God.
Hope you all have a wonderful
Yes.
evening. We look forward to next time. Okay. Bye. Good day.